Okay, so today we're going to be learning Masechet Psachim, Kuf Tet, and we have been learning Masechet Psachim, the parak on parak Arbi Psachim, and we've been learning about the Mishnah. And at the end of the Mishnah it says, "Afilu ani shebYisrael lo yochal ad sheyesev v'lo yifchatu lo me'arba kosot shel yain v'afilu men hatemchui." So basically, it says that everyone, even poor people, have to have 4 cups of wine. The Gemara now on page 109, Kuftet, asks the following question. It says it was not really a question. It says it makes a statement. It says Hakol chayavin tanu Rabbanan. This is a piece of tonight material. This is a statement of the rabbis of the Mishnah, and they say as follows. They say Hakol chayavin ba'arba kosot. Everybody has to drink 4 cups of wine. And it doesn't matter, echad anashim, ve'echad tinokot. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or a child, anyone, a grown man, a grown woman, and a grandchild, all of them have to have 4 cups of wine. To which Rav Yehuda asks, v'chi ma to'elet yesh letinoket bayayin. Okay, I understand that men and women drink wine, fine, that much I understand. But the problem is, what about kids? What good do they get out of drinking wine? It's not even healthy for them. Why would they drink wine? To which the answer is given. Ela mechalkin lehem klayot ve'egozim be'erev Pesach kadei shelo yishnu v'yishalu. Instead, they say, Rabbi Yehuda says, no. Instead of giving them wine, what you need to do is to give them treats and to give them nuts and to give them lots of different interesting things. Like cracked wheat and stuff like that. On Erev Pesach, cracked wheat is the last thing you're going to give them because that's chametz. But you give them various different food stuffs and interesting stuff, and you give them on Erev Pesach. You give them on before Pesach, and you give them to them. Why do you give it to them? Kadei shelo yishnu v'yishalu. You give it to them particularly so they will not sleep, and that they will ask questions. And this is the first time that we see the idea of actually asking questions. We have to try and encourage the kids to ask questions all night. And so therefore we want to keep them awake and we want to keep them curious. So we give them strange foods that they wouldn't normally have at nighttime. You always say, don't eat sweets before supper. And on this occasion, you're actually giving them treats. And it's a bit odd. So they're going to ask questions about that. Rabbi Akiva would do exactly that. And he would give these treats to these kids on Erev Pesach, so that they would not sleep and that they would ask questions. So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Akiva also did the same thing. V'tanya, Rabbi Eliezer, he would do something else. Rabbi Eliezer would say something else. He would say, Chotfim matzot belel pesachim. We would hide. We would grab away the matzot from the kids, so that the kids will not sleep. So that we should have like things that are weird going on. And we do this to this day with the afikomen. We hide the afikomen. This is the source for hiding the afikomen. We hide the matzot on Pesach in order that the kids have something to keep them awake. So the afikomen, which is right at the end of almost at the end of the Seder. So we keep the kids going until then by hiding it, and they're all excited for the Hunt the Afikomen game. And so that's why we do that, and so in order to keep them awake. Tanya, there's another piece of the Gemara. They say, Amor alav Rabbi Akiva, they say about Rabbi Akiva, he would never Rabbi Akiva would never get up from the Beit Midrash. On a normal day, when you were learning in the Beit Midrash, Rabbi Akiva would be the last to leave, and he would never tell people, right, it's time to go home now. He would never say that except for twice a year. Okay? He would never say it's time to get up from the Beit Midrash to go home. He would never say that ever. He would only say it twice a year on Erev Pesach, on an Erev Yom Kippur. Why? The Erev Pesach. Why would he do Erev Pesach? He would do that so that the kids would be able to sleep. That's why he would send people home on Erev Pesach, to make sure they had a chance to sleep before the Seder. And he would do it also on Erev Yom Kippur. Why? In order that they would feed their children on Erev Yom Kippur. So he would send people home. He's not actually sending home the kids here. He's sending home the parents of the kids, just to make sure that the kids do actually eat on Erev. Or the kids do actually sleep on Erev Pesach. They must have a chance to sleep on Erev Pesach. Good luck with that if you've got kids. They tend never to actually sleep, but you've got to make an effort to try and get them to sleep. Tanu Rabbanan. Another piece of tonight material talks about what happens on Pesach. Okay, on Pesach. This is actually talking generally about Chagim, but you'll see why it's mentioned here. Tanu Rabbanan. Chayav Adam lesameach banav uvnei veito baregel. Everyone is actually obligated to make their family, so the children and the people in their house, they should all be happy on one of the regalim, on one of the festivals. So that's Pesach, Shavuot, or Sukkot. These are called regalim, and we are supposed to be keeping people happy on these. And why do we know that? Shnema, because it says, "V'samachta b'chagecha." You should be happy on your festival. Specifically, it said about Sukkot, but it's applied to all the chagim. And the question is asked, what can you make people happy with? Obviously, bayayin. That's what everyone makes. That's what you get happy with. You can get happy with wine. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's not as simple as that. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's not only wine. Okay. Anashim bara'ui lehem, v'nashim bara'ui lehem. Men should get what they like, and women should get what they like. What's he talking about? Anashim bara'ui lehem. Men should get what they like, wine. Obviously, that's what a man wants, wine. That's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying, at least. V'nashim b'mai. What do women really want? What's going to make them happy? Right. This is the genuine question. What's going to make them happy? Right. He's suggesting here that what's going to make women happy more than just having wine. He says, well, he does. The answer is given to Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef, who's actually in Amorah, says in Bavel, what they used to give to women was big tiv'onim. They would give colorful clothes. So you'd buy them buy women new clothes for Yom Tov, and Be'eretz Yisrael, and in Israel they would give them bigdei pishtan meguratzin, and in Israel they would give them freshly pressed linen robes. And these were the fashions of the times, and these guys buy them fashionable clothes dependent on where they're living. This is what women apparently wanted in those days. Obviously, this is a generalization, but the important thing is you get whatever's going to make you happy is what you should be getting on Yom Tov. So if that's going to be clothes, that's clothes. If it's going to be wine, if it's good wine, then you have good wine. These are things you should have. Yet another expression about how you can make people happy. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera said very clearly, this is what happens, right? Once upon a time, I actually think this is quite a revealing statement. When the temple was around, when we had the temple, you couldn't have. It was considered were not happy unless you were eating meat. You were eating meat. Shnema, why? You should sacrifice shlamim, your peace offerings, and you should eat them, and you should be happy before Hashem. Bnei B'Tzera is saying that when the Beit HaMikdash was around, the way to be happy on the Chag was to eat meat, to bring a sacrifice, bring a peace offering, and to sacrifice it, and that would be what would make you happy on the Chag. Now that we haven't got a Beit HaMikdash, ein simcha ela b'yayin. Now we cannot have happiness except from wine. Wine is the only way that we can be happy. And why is that? Because it's why? How do we know that? Wine will make people happy. Now, what I find particularly intriguing about this statement by Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is he seems to be suggesting that why can't you eat meat now? You can eat meat now. Why can't it make you happy now? He's suggesting that meat is something which is associated with the temple. I think that Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is suggesting here that they didn't necessarily eat meat. Meat was not something that was eaten regularly. They would have other foods. They would only eat meat on special occasions. They would only eat meat when they had brought a sacrifice to the temple, and they would eat that sacrifice. It was a big deal. They weren't eating meat like we are every day. And you can see this in Masechet Chulin as well. They go into this in quite a lot of detail. Meat was not an everyday food. And it looks to me, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is saying that now that the temple's not around, we hardly eat meat at all. And so you wouldn't have meat necessarily on Chag. It's a very, I think this, I may be taking this a bit too far, but I do think it's an interesting observation that he seems to suggest that now there's no temple, we can only have wine. We can't have meat. It's not forbidden to have meat, but it's just a rarity. It's just not something you would necessarily do. Right. Now we're moving on to to a new topic. We actually saw a couple of days ago, was it yesterday? I can't remember. We saw that the amount of wine you're supposed to drink was a revi'it. You're supposed to have a revi'it of wine. Now the Gemara is going to start talking about how much is a revi'it. How do we know how much a revi'it is? And Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said that there was a kista de Mauricia. There was a certain cup which was there for holding brine for pickling fish, and there was a certain cup that was used in Tzipori, and it was actually used to, and that was a standard size. There was a standard size. This kista de Mauriasa was a standard size, and that was considered v'hi havat kamin lugad the mikdash, and it was exactly the same size as the lug that is mentioned in the mikdash. There's a size called a lug in the mikdash, and this cup was exactly the size of a lug, and that was used as a standard. And from that, bar masharin revi'it shebepesach, and that they would use to show what a revi'it was, because a revi'it is a quarter of a lug. So if you know what a lug is, then you can say a quarter of that is a revi'it. So they would have a standard thing in Tzipori and say that was the standard, and that's what people who lived in Tzipori, that's how they would know how much they should drink on Pesach and how much basically all their sizes were, how the standard sizes were fixed according to this particular standard jug. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says actually there's another thing. There was they changed the sizes of things, and there was something called a tamanyata, which was a certain size. It was a certain size that was a standard size in Tveria. It doesn't matter how big that is. What's important is the standard size changed. So the earlier ones were suddenly reduced in size. So kadmayata havat Tveria, v'havat yetera al dad riva. So that the earlier ones, the old ones, and people used to have the old ones hanging around, and they were slightly bigger than the new ones. And the difference in size was a revi'it. They were the old ones were a revi'it bigger than the new ones. So what you could do if you want to know how much a revi'it was, you take one of the old ones and you pour it into one of the new ones until it fills up, and what's left behind is a revi'it. So they'd say that you could take one, pour it into the other, and you end up with a revi'it. And the bar masharim revi'it b'Pesach, and that way you could tell how much a revi'it was, so you could have your minimal amount on Pesach. A short spoiler, by the way, a good way of remembering how much a revi'it is cost. The word cost, the gematria of the word cost is 86. Kaf vav samach is 20 plus 6 plus 60, so that's 86. In fact, it's 86 milliliters. The minimum size of a revi'it today we consider to be 86 milliliters. That's just an interesting thing. But Amar Rav Chisda said, no, you know what? You don't need any standard measurements. You have fingers, you know how much a revi'it is. How? He says, revi'it shel Torah, the revi'it of a Torah is 2 fingers, that's 2 sideways fingers. This isn't the length of a finger, this is the length of a finger. So 2 fingers by 2 fingers. So basically that's square where they cross there. So that's square, etzba'ayim al etzba'ayim. So let's make a box out of that. So it's going to be etzba'ayim al etzba'ayim, v'rom, etzba'ayim v'chetzi v'chomesh etzba. So the top is going to have to be up to 2 fingers and a half finger and a fifth of a finger on top of that. Here's a little picture, right? We have a cube. It's not exactly a cube, slightly taller than a cube. It's got 2 fingers by 2 fingers by 2.7 fingers. 2.7 is the same as 2 plus a half plus a fifth. So that size of a thing, that is what a revi'it is. That's what Rav Chisda says. Because Rav Chisda is giving this standard size to show that it is. He has an interesting way of working that out, right? How does he know that is the size? How do you know that? How does he get that 2 by 2 by 2.7? He says he learns it out from a pasuk, right? He learns it out from the pasuk. The pasuk says v'rachat mayim et kol b'saro. It's actually talking about a mikvah. And there's a Mishnah which says, or it's not a Mishnah, it's a Breita, it's a piece of written by the rabbis of the Mishnah, and they say you should wash your body in water. This is how you do the mikvah. You bathe your body in the water. And it says, Shelo yehei davar chotzet ben b'saro lamayim, and it shouldn't divide between your body and the water. and they say b'mayim, in the water of the mikveh, et kol basaro, rachat mayim et kol basaro. What does it mean kol basaro? Mayim shekol gufa alai behen. The amount of water in the mikveh has to be exactly the same so that a man can actually completely submerge himself. The minimum amount of water should be how much a man can submerge himself. And they say, how much is that? And they say, Amma al Amma barom shalosh amot. So it has to be 1 amma by 1 amma, and the height has to be 3 amot. The Chachamim said that as approximately Mikvah is Arba'im Seah. That's going to have to be 40 Seah. This is basically what they're saying. A man's height, this is the standard man, and a man would actually be slightly taller than 3 amot. But this is an amma. So if you actually put 3 of these, one after the other, the average person is going to be taller than that. But he's going to be able to bend down and squish himself into this box of 1 amma by 1 amma by 3 amot, and that will be his he'll be able to use that as a mikveh. So I've shown it as an example here, and they estimated this to be 40 se'ah. Now the good thing about this is it gives us a way to convert amot into se'ah, right? We know se'ah is 40 se'ah, right? But we now can convert 1 amma into 40 se'ah. And if you do that, then they say, hang on, I was going to do this later. Hang on. Okay, I'm going to come back to this in a second. What I wanted to show you here is, in order to do the conversion, it's important to know what these sizes are. An amma, right, is considered 6 tfachim. That's a tefach. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 takes you to 6 tfachim, and each tefach is 4 etzba'ot. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've got 1 amma is 6 tfachim, which is 24 etzba'ot, right? Similarly, you can do the same thing with a se'ah. A se'ah is 6 kub, and a kub is 4 logim, and the log is 4 revi'ot. Now, these numbers, the amma people tend to know, but se'ah, kub, log, revi'ot, these are just words in the Gemara. People don't realize. But I have a caffeine addict's guide to what these things are. And the revi'it is basically an espresso cup. That's how much a revi'it is. So every time you hear the word revi'it, think about that kind of size. It's slightly smaller than a regular cup, but that's a revi'it size. A log is a can of Coke. It's approximately 300 milliliters. So that's your can of Coke. A kav is going to be bigger than that. It's a liter and a half. It's going to be 4 times the log, so it's about a liter and a half. This is approximate, but it gives you some kind of something in your head, so you can hear these numbers, what you're talking about, which makes that's a kav, so which makes the se'ah a 6-pack of these things. So then you've got a caffeinated guide, and it gives you an idea of how much these things are. So 40 se'ah is considered big enough to hold your body for the purposes of a mikveh. You can actually do a calculation now. I'll just do this very quickly on the thing here. You can see if you got 1 by 1 by 3 to make a 40 se'ah, and you've got these conversion factors, then it doesn't take much math to work out that 1 amma is actually 24 etzba'ot, and you've got 24 etzba'ot at the top, 72 etzba'ot, which is 3 amma on the side, and then 40 se'ah is going to be, if you have to multiply it by 96, you end up with 3,840 revi'ot. So then you do a little bit of maths. You say 24 by 24 by 72 etzba'ot, the E stands for etzba'ot, gives you 41,472 etzba'ot cubed. And then you can actually play games with it. You can say that number, that 41,472 etzba'ot cubed, is the same as 3,840. This is the way that a modern mathematician would do these calculations. If you look in the Rashi, he does it in a completely different way, which is quite interesting in itself. But this is the way a modern mathematician would do it with our algebraic notation. And we have, so therefore, if you do that, you can divide through by 3,840 to get you how much a revi'it is. And if you actually do that calculation, 41472 divided by 3840, it comes out to 10.8 etzba'ot shalosh. And what's interesting about that is if you can break that down, at 10.8 cubic etzba'ot are actually 2 by 2 by 2.7. Do the math, 2 by 2 by 2 times 2 times 2.7 gets you that. That's exactly what they said. That is the size of a revi'it, not to scale. That is the size of a revi'it, and that's how you would work it out. I'm going to go back to what I said we were going to do before. The very end of that sigya goes on to say, Rav Ashi says, a shulchan shel mikdash, the Shulchan in the Bet HaMikdash, right? The Shulchan in the Bet HaMikdash was quite a large thing, and I'm trying to do exactly the sizes. Amatayim v'chetzi al ko, amah v'chetzi rochbo, amah v'chetzi komoto. I think that's the size of it. I think it was an amah by 1.5 amah. Whatever, it's 2.5 amah by 2.5 by 1.5 amah. I'm getting confused about the numbers. I haven't got it written down in front of me. And the important thing about this thing is it wouldn't have fitted into a mikveh of this size. So they say, Shulchan Shel Mikdash, Shel Plakim Hava, it must have been made in part pieces. You could take it apart to put it into the mikveh. The Isal Kadatcha Hadukeha Hava, Mihadek, if you said it was all welded together as one piece, Amatab Amata Hechi Matbele. How could they possibly have put it into one by one if it has this a much bigger size? So it must have been bigger. So the Gemara says, Markusha, how's that's not really a problem? You're trying to, why would you squeeze it into the minimum sized mikveh? Maybe they put it into a much bigger one. For example, the famous pool of Shlomo, which was there, the Tanya of Rabbi Chia told us the size of that. Yam she'asa Shlomo machzik 150 mikveh tahara. It would actually hold 150 times the size of a mikveh tahara. So it was very big, and it could it could fit into, and the shulchan could even fit into that. Okay, skipping past all the things we've just done, and I'm now going to go to the very last piece of the Gemara, which is going to lead us tomorrow. Okay, this is actually beginning to get weird. The perek now begins to get weird. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. But what it says now is, Lo yifchatu mi arba kosot. You shouldn't have less than 4 cups. To which the Gemara says, Heichi mitaknei Rabbanan midi da'ati be'lesekazakana. How could the Rabbanim bring us into danger? Because 4 is a dangerous number. Weird stuff. Numerology here. Vatanya, Lo yochal adam trei. People should not eat even-numbered things. V'lo yishtet trei. They should not drink even-numbered things. And they shouldn't wipe themselves even number of times. And you shouldn't go to the bathroom an even number of times. They seem to have this concept that if you did things an even number of times, you left yourself susceptible to danger by the spooky mazikin, that would the not demons, but the damaging spirits that would come and hurt you. Would all be willing, they're waiting for you to go even number of times, and then they'd find a way in. This is the theory that they had at the time. Amar Rav Nachman says, Amar Kral, this doesn't apply on Pesach night. Why? Because it's called Leil Shimurim. This was the day that we were protected by God. Leil Mushumab Uba Min HaMazikin. So therefore the Mazikin, these spooky, dangerous spirits, cannot hurt you on Seder night. And then also Rav Amar, it's more than that. It's not just that they can't hurt you. Also, these 4 cups aren't really an even number. Gemara, as only the Gemara can do, it says, well, if 4 isn't really an even number. Why? Because a bracha, when you make a bracha, it can only add to be good. It won't add to be bad. So if you've got 1 cup and you have another cup, that doesn't count as 2, because you've now got this is a kos bracha. It's a bracha cup, so it doesn't add to make it 2. And the 3rd one can add to make it 3, but the 4th one can't add to make it 4 because they're bracha cups, and because they're special cups. And Ravina Amar, no. Each cup is supposed to separate our freedom. So therefore, it's not 4 cups, it's 4 sets of 1 cup. Each one stands on its own. Each one is an odd number, not an even number. So therefore, they're not really even numbers. We will deal with this in much greater length tomorrow. Clearly, there is something weird going on. The Gemara seems to be thinking that even numbers are spooky, and we are going to have to deal with this. And to how the rabbis dealt with that is a topic for tomorrow.